Hi, welcome to Learning Leaders Spotlight, where we record the learning leaders of today to help the learning leaders of tomorrow. I'm your host, Leanne Langford, and I am the president of the sponsor of this podcast, Training Pros. Training Pros is a learning and development contract staffing company. We like to say when you have more projects than people, let us help find the best consultant to start your project with confidence. I have a special guest today. It is Dan Collier is with us from Suffolk. He's the Senior Director of Talent and Leadership Development. Dan, can you share with us a 60-second overview of who you are and what you do?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Leanne, and thanks for having me on. So I work for Suffolk Construction based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I've been here a little over 4 years. When I first started with Suffolk, I headed up their learning and development department and kind of reconstructed that department. There had been a gap between our group and the group that was here before. And then in the last year and a half or so, I've moved into specialize solely on leadership, management, and professional skill development for the entire corporation. So anyone who moves into a manager role or who we believe is going to move into a manager role um, comes through programs that we have designed for them.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I love working on leadership development programs. Those are the most impactful, I think. So we all have a different story about this, but what is it about learning and development that first attracted you back in the beginning?
All right. So I have kind of a strange journey, Leah. Years ago, in the first part of my career, I was actually a printer. I worked in the printing industry. I ran printing presses. And I did well at it, and it never really got me very excited. And so I moved out of printing into customer service and ultimately into quality management, which is, I guess, today lean manufacturing or lean quality. And what I discovered during that journey is the part of the job I loved the most is when I was able to teach someone else what I knew how to do. So back when I was running the printing presses, I would find people, whether they be janitors or messengers or people that were kind of sitting around, and I would bring them over and say, "Here, let me teach you how to run a press." And then when I moved into customer service, I did the same thing there, and I trained customer service. And then when I moved into quality, that was really the first time that I was in a position to stand up in front of a classroom and teach quality principles and teach people how to facilitate quality teams. And that's when I really, got bit by the bug to do training and development full time.
So it's a similar story to most of us, of our generation of L&D people is we accidentally tried it in part of our job and said, this is the funnest thing I've gotten to do in months.
Absolutely.
I want to keep doing more of that. How do I do that? You've been in L&D a while. What are the most impactful changes you've seen in the last few years in L&D?
So I think, yeah, depending on what you're describing as few years, I think coming from the old days when I first started, of course, when e-learning came on board and kind of started to have people do things that was more on demand, self-directed, was a big impact. I think in the most recent years that evolution of e-learning into being more of micro learning, video based. Um, Content that can be consumed pretty much more quickly or when you have time. I think some of the other interesting changes that I'm seeing, and we've adopted here at Suffolk, some of it is using some of the technologies around virtual reality and augmented reality, really giving people a three-dimensional environment to go into and practice things. And I'm starting to see the horizon around artificial intelligence as being kind of the next place would be going. But it's really that technology swing. The other interesting thing that I think, Leanne, is that even with all of this technology and being able to do things in a different way for people who are more geographically spread out or dispersed, uh, there still seems to be a large degree, in my opinion, of instructor led, whether it be virtual instructor led or in classroom instructor led, that's on demand in most organizations. So it's not an either or, in my opinion. I really think it's an and with every technology, it just gets to added on to everything else that we've done before.
Thank you for that. A lot of people think that the classroom is dead, but it's not. It's here every day. All of us are using it, whether we know it or not. Virtual training or go to a class. I think it's very impactful and it's a great way to help with the higher level cognitive changes and behavioral changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, where do you see learning and development heading in the next 5 years?
I think to the point that I just made, I really think that it's going to continue to evolve. It'll embrace new technology opportunities and still balance with some of the more traditional things there. I know most recently our team has been using artificial intelligence to help us with content creation, to help us with some of the aspects of the role that we used to call technical writing. A lot of that technical writing that took a lot of expertise, from trained writers before, uh, is being really augmented with the, artificial intelligence technology. Um, if you think about even, building case studies and scenarios for role plays and things like that. All of those are being much more quickly created, and pretty effectively created using those technologies. So I think things like that will just help continue to streamline what we do, as it folds into everything else that we do in this industry.
And how do you think that streamlining is going to affect um, people's jobs?
You know, I'm one of those doubting Thomases. I don't think that it's, let me say it this way. What I've watched with technology over the years going back, the 30, 40 years ago when e-learning was first coming around, when we would get programs out on giant discs that had to run on different video machines, it never did it replace the manpower that we always said. I really think that there's gonna be new skill sets that have to be learned. I think our instructional designers and our content and curriculum developers are going to have to figure out how to use the best tools possible to be more effective and efficient. And I don't see that it's going to dramatically impact just the overall head count in the industry. It hasn't, in my experience over the last 40 years. I, I can't see that's going to going forward.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I think that some people are afraid that it's going to reduce what we can do, but if it follows the same path as e-learning did, it's just going to increase the demand for what we can do. We'll be able to do more and we will find more things that we can impact with what we do.
Yeah, I think I remember being reading an article 20 years ago that the on-demand online learning was going to absolutely eliminate the need for training professionals to be on airplanes, packing bags, going to different cities. There'll be no need for you to do that anymore, or for students to fly into other cities to come to a classroom at a headquarters somewhere. Um, we just haven't seen it. We really haven't. I mean, during the pandemic, we all locked down and did what we had to do, but coming right out of it, we're gangbusters back to people coming around. I think there's a lot more from the in-person experience than what people give it credit for.
I think that there's more to the in-person experience than just this cognitive skills being passed. There's the camaraderie, there's finding other colleagues, there's finding people to talk things over with and discuss. And, it's not the same in a breakout room. We
Not
try
the
to make
same
it
at
the
all.
same.
Yeah, yeah, not the same at all.
I have an interesting question for you. If you had 10 times your current budget, what would you do with that?
10 times my current budget. I think first I would build a bricks and mortar facility here at our headquarters in Boston. Right now, we share space with conference rooms and things like that. My experience in the past is to have a dedicated learning center that's set up with all of the technology to really enhance training. Is really beneficial for the in person. I would add to my staff to create more programs, um, and really help build out more curriculum to for what we have available here at Suffolk. Um, I don't think what else would I do? I don't know. That's a great question, but I think right there is my reaction was, "Oh, give me that budget, and I'll be standing up a few things pretty quickly."
It's very nice to have the dedicated training facility to conduct the courses. I used to have to share a classroom with 2 other functions in the company, and so every time I needed to teach a class, I had to go in early that morning and move all their stuff out of there, get it ready, and then, of course, they were like, "Ugh, I needed to use the room." Like, "No, I
Yeah,
reserved it. It's mine."
a lot of
And
overlap.
they wanted to kick us. I was like, "Your tables and chairs are in the way." It's like, "We can't help it." What skill or role in L&D are you finding the most difficult to find right now?
And it's funny that we've been talking a little bit about this idea of um, in-person classroom instruction still being in demand. I find that that's where I have the hardest time finding talent to fulfill those needs. I think during the time when e-learning and video learning was becoming more and more prevalent, I think a lot of the professionals in our industry started to gravitate and learn those skills. I think the authoring softwares and some of the other technology made that easier for people to kind of travel in that direction. I think they did that out of fear that there wouldn't be classroom instructors in the future. And um, and so that's where I have the hardest time is finding people that not only have really strong skills at standing up in front of a room and facilitating a program and managing the classroom, uh, but really have a passion for it. And I think that's what's making me most concerned about what's going forward is I don't know that people know that that's actually a profession. And in a profession that you can really perfect. And so that's really, part of what I think is one of the big gaps I see in my world right now.
That's interesting. And so one of the things that we're seeing at Training Pros is a lot of school teachers trying to make the transition into classroom facilitators. These are people who do want to be upfront and be in front of people, but they don't have the corporate skill set yet. But they do have the learning skill set and the stand up in front of people. They just need a little tweak about andragogy. But I think that that could be a resource to tap.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea. And now that you say that, you're making me think one of the folks on my team went to school to become a teacher, chose not to. She came to work at Suffolk 11 years ago and worked on the construction side for a while and then wound up coming into our HR operations. I basically stole her a couple of years ago because I could see what a talented individual she was, and I've been working closely with her to learn facilitation skills. And I'm proud to say that for some of our programs, she's out there flying solo and delivering programs that I think 3 or 4 years ago she never thought she'd be able to.
Oh, it's fantastic that she's been able to leverage her schooling and then her business experience to launch maybe a new career.
Yeah, bring the two together.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, I hope she's getting lots of exposure to the L&D world, maybe ATD or the conferences, things like that would probably help her see a real big future.
We've been working at it. Yes.
Yeah. Where do you find uh, that you get the best industry news, the best content about what's going on in our world?
Okay. So I am a self-admitted ATD snob. I have been involved with ATD for anywhere probably over 30 years now. to some degree or another. I uh, participated with ATD in the Greater Boston chapter. I am a former president in other board positions here. Probably have gone to over 20 of their international conferences over the years. So they're always one of the cornerstones that I go to when I'm looking for research. I think their state of the industry report every year is very helpful. Some of the other, there are some other resources. Training Industry Magazine has always been another place where I go to get some information. Most recently, Leanne, I find a lot of information from LinkedIn and the LinkedIn learning kind of aspect of LinkedIn. They also do a state of industry type report every year. They do a lot of research. They do a lot of white papers and thought leadership. So I would say that that's kind of probably the top three that I go to for I'm trying to stay fresh on what's going on.
That's fantastic. I'm also an ATD fan. I joined the Atlanta chapter in 1997. So just to date myself. And I've also served as on the board as a, volunteer, all of that. And then I find that LinkedIn is a great way to see what people are talking about and then dig in and read about that somewhere. But I want to know what my colleagues in L&D are talking about, what's on their minds, and then I can go look at it. So I find that's a really good source as well. Okay, now this is my personal little question I like to ask everybody because after my last interview here, I downloaded the book on Audible right away and I've been listening to it while I walk. What is one book you would recommend for anybody who's wanting to move into L&D leadership?
One book, I can only pick one.
Oh, you can pick more than one.
Oh, all right. It's because that's really hard because when I think about my journey into learning and development and kind of, so, I made that transition from, kind of an operations world into the learning and development world. One of the first things that I had to really understand was adult learning theory and some of the stuff behind that. I point everyone I know to read Malcolm Knoll. So whether it's, the modern practice of adult learning, or adult education, I should say, or his 6 principles on andragogy, any of those kind of things really gives you the foundation that you need to understand what we do. Where I am a huge student of leadership, so I'm constantly reading the leadership leaders that are out there. So the Marshall Goldsmith, I'm a big fan of servant leadership. So it goes back to Robert Greenleaf in his book on servant leadership, emotional intelligence. You have to think about Daniel Goleman. So that's where I would stay there. Um, I also support a lot of team development. And so there I would say Marcus Buckingham, First Break All the Rules, or The 9 Lies About Work, Patrick Lencioni, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and then finally, I think there's a thought leader out there that not a lot of people are familiar with, and it's really in the performance improvement world. His name is Dr. Carl Binder, and developed the performance thinking, a performance chain, and the 6 boxes model for really helping diagnose where underperformance might come from. But here's a spoiler alert: it's not always a training issue, right? Sometimes there are other root causes to it. So if I had any advice to anybody, and the advice I share with my team members here is to kind of look in those kind of 4 areas of how do adults learn, how do leaders lead, how do teams come together and become high functioning, and how do we actually improve performance, which is what our I think the objective of what we do every day.
So I've read a lot of those. So luckily, I was like, wow, I'm never going to read that many books. So, but I'm intrigued by the book about the performance improvement. Um, Back when I was back in corporate L&D leadership, I would keep the Mager chart for analyzing performance problems, where you go through a flow chart. You know, have they ever done it? Yes or no? Go.
Yep.
And I would walk every time somebody came in and said, "We have a training problem." I'm like, let's sit down and go through this chart and figure out what to do.
Do we? Do we really?
And most of the time, it wasn't a training problem. Oh, that's great. Those are you've got a real who's who on your book list for sure. Anybody listening that wants to follow what you've said has got good 6 months of reading ahead of them.
Yeah. Well, it's a great place to get a good foundation. So
It is. Thank goodness for Audible. That really helps me out.
me too.
So, Dan, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
I'd say the best way is to find me on LinkedIn. And so I'm listed there as Dan Collier. And you'll see that it will show up working at Suffolk Construction. Reach out and ping me. I'm more than happy to connect with anyone. I've got thousands, literally thousands of LinkedIn connections. So that would be a great way to do that. And I'm more than happy to have a chat with anybody about anything that I can be helpful with.
That's fantastic. Uh, Thank you so much for appearing on our show today. I know it's a favor to me as an old friend that you came on with us, but I just want to express my sincere thanks. And for as a gift to you for being on our show, I'm going to plant 5 trees in your name.
Oh,
Our
thanks.
charity at Training Pros is planting trees around the world. We've planted over 3,500 trees to date.
Phenomenal.
And I'll plant 5 trees in your name and send you a certificate showing you where they're planted. And I don't think you can go visit them. They're saplings, but it's just our way of just letting you know how much we appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's kind of you.
Well, thank you. And that's this episode of Learning Leader Spotlight. I hope you tune in again next time.
Thanks, Leanne.